Thanks for listening to the Granite List.Live. Today's episode is brought to you by Connect Healthcare Collaboration, where benefits marketing meets clinical advocacy to drive effective employee engagement.
Welcome to another episode of the Granite List.Live. Today, I am joined by Paul Freed. He is CEO and founder of I Made the Arrangements. And today we're talking about a little bit of a difficult subject and a subject that doesn't come up often in the employer space. And it is about end-of-life planning. So it's going to be a great conversation. Paul, thanks so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me. How are you?
Great. Okay, how'd we get here? Tell me about your backstory of why you founded I Made the Arrangements.
So for me, I've always been very interested in legacy planning. I've always thought about this, even going back to I don't want to date myself, but the VCR, right? When these camcorders came out, they're really big, kind of clunky things. But one of the first things I thought to do with it was to record my own eulogy. And I thought about that because I hope to live to the ripe old age of 95, 100, and I'll be spry and everything else. But, is that the way I want to be remembered if people are viewing me in an open casket? So I thought, how cool would it be to videotape a eulogy and have that played at my funeral? And, it's going back a number of years. So, so I've been thinking about this for quite some time. I've always been big on funerals. I think that funerals are the last opportunity you get to say goodbye to somebody. And it's the last impression that you'll make on your loved ones. I'll share a story with you. So my father was a Holocaust survivor. And in January of 2024, I had the opportunity to attend a ceremony at Auschwitz. It was a ceremony for the 79th anniversary of the liberation of the camp. My father was imprisoned there, and I took the opportunity to go. I had never been. So kind of walking through this facility, walking through a gas chamber, walking through, staring at the mouth of these ovens and looking at the chimneys where these souls were just exterminated and incinerated.
Wow.
But for me, one of the most profound takeaways was walking through a building, and there were walls of portraits of these anonymous faces. And that really struck me. And I couldn't help but think what their end-of-life plan was.
Yeah.
And what is their legacy, or what is of their legacy? This is it. They're a photo on a wall, no name, just a number. And I couldn't help but think that, I'd like to do something about this somehow, but couldn't think of how or what. I could start thinking about legacy planning.
Yeah.
So when I got home, I started kind of putting a pen to paper and kind of mapping out what I thought might be a good platform. My background, spent most of my professional life in real estate development. Although I've been involved in a bunch of different businesses, I would really consider myself a serial entrepreneur. So started kicking around the idea of putting together a website where people could go and make all of their end-of-life arrangements and trying to humanize this. So that's kind of how the site came to be.
Wow. That's breathtaking and powerful backstory. At a time that you were referencing, there was no technology and those poor families that had to go through that. So what a gift that you're bringing to the present day. And it's amazing it's taken so long to actually have a solution to provide these.
It's interesting, right? I've spent a lot of time kind of researching all this. And look, we are, by simple terms, we're a death-denying culture. You start looking at statistics, 24% of Americans have a will. Mm-hmm. That's a recent stat as of 2025. And you have to ask yourself why. And there's a couple of reasons, but first and foremost is that it's a topic people don't want to talk about. People shy away from it. Mm-hmm. I would believe that if people knew the chaos that was left behind by not preparing or not making those arrangements prior to, that if given the opportunity to do it again or rethink it, they would. This past Monday, which was a couple of days ago, I was at Whole Foods, and I bumped into a woman that used to work at the bank I did banking at, and I hadn't seen her in a number of years. She had moved out of the area. Mm-hmm. She said she recently had to come back because her dad passed away and there was no will in place. The estate was thrown into probate. And she was sharing with me the horrors. This is so typical.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she said, look, my father was a blue-collar guy, hard worker, successful, owned a lot of real estate, but had a hard time with attorneys. So couldn't bring himself to go to an attorney and have a will drawn up. Her father was a loving man. If he had known the devastation that was left behind, I'm sure he would have thought differently. So for me, I think it's very important that we humanize this. And that was the goal from the beginning, to lighten up this kind of very heavy topic. We consider this end-of-life planning. I'm looking at even changing that terminology around to maybe family planning.
Right.
And again, just trying to shy away from the negative connotations. This is really about end-of-life planning is about peace of mind. It really is. There's nothing morbid about this. This is all about love. I was sharing recently with somebody, and I said, when you think about a will, the gift isn't in the will. The gift is the will. What people don't realize is that if you don't put a will together on your own, your state has one prepared for you. And the sad truth is that the state doesn't care who gets your home.
Yeah. And, I'm just thinking of it kind of my generation perspective. We plan so much, but we don't plan for the ultimate, that we will all die, in the chaos that's left behind. And like what you're saying, it's a gift to your family members to have all of that prepared.
Right. You think about end of life or funeral. This is a life cycle event. Now, people will spend 2 years planning a wedding that statistically in our country will last 8 years. hate to break the news to you. But yet nobody wants to take the time to kind of plan end of life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem. And we look at how this kind of spills over and how this affects families. And, we'll talk about probate for a second. This is not uncommon. So the state gets thrown into probate. And if there's siblings involved, what happens is the siblings lawyer up, trying to kind of fight for what's theirs. And there is infighting within the families. It's so typical. This is so common, and it's so sad.
Yeah.
So for me, creating this was really about relieving the burden on our loved ones. I know me personally, I want my children to mourn that loss as they should and not have to worry about things like A, who's going to attend the funeral, B, is he going to be cremated or buried, C, what are we doing with the assets? So that was really the goal, right? Relieving the burden on your loved ones and kind of humanizing this in kind of a one-stop shop platform.
What is available on your platform? It sounds like there's a lot of questions that need to be answered if you want this to play out correctly as a personal wish and a gift to your family members. Can you walk us through what's available on your platform?
So what started out as, and for me, this is all about capturing end-of-life wishes, right? That's the premise of the site. So we've coined some terminology, and I can kind of walk you through that. So we have what we call a wish capture questionnaire, just a logistics map of what your funeral itself will look like.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? What would you like done with your ashes? Would you like readings? Who would you like to read them? What is the overall tone? What do you expect people to wear? Where would you like this celebration held? Things like that. So you'll log in, you'll create a profile, and you'll fill out this questionnaire. It's a simple fill in the blank, check the boxes document. And once you're done, you'll deem that complete. The system will then email you back a hard copy of this document. So now you can share that with your loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll share this story with you. I met a woman recently who lost her mom. And her and her sister got together. They immediately had mom cremated because that's what they believed mom wanted. A couple of months later, they went to mom's house to start cleaning it out. And they found a legal pad with mom's funeral requirements, where she wanted to be buried, the casket she wanted to be buried in. She had even tagged and identified an outfit that she wanted to wear. And these poor daughters were devastated.
Oh, wow.
And it's interesting to me in that Mom went through the process of documenting all this, but still couldn't bring herself to talk to her kids about it.
Right.
And there lies the problem. So with our site, we believe that this is personal stuff. So take the time personally and create an account, walk through all of this so that your family knows. You can create your funeral plan. And then we took that same logic and said, well, you know what? People can create a will as well. So we have that. You can go in, you can create a will. It's a simple fill in the blank, check the box document. When you're done, you print it out, sign it, have it witnessed, notarized, file it with the county if need be, and you're protected. We use the same logic for an advance directive, a living will. So now all of your medical wishes are documented. We ask that you assign what we call a wish keeper. It's a fancy name for an executor. So you will invite your wish keeper through the site. Obviously, you'll have talked to them. They know that this email's coming. They'll get an email. They'll accept the role as your wish keeper, and they will have limited access to your profile and all of your information while you're alive. Their key role is to enter the date you pass away. And once they enter the date of passing, they'll have full access to your profile and to all the information that you provided within that profile so that they can carry out these wishes for you. There's an area within the site where you can add as many contacts as you'd like. And then you can create a notification of passing. Once the wish keeper enters the date you pass, all of your contacts will get an email from you letting them know that you passed away. So you can personalize that however you'd like. There's also some tips on kind of what you may want to say. And the thought behind that is, I know me personally, I bump into people from time to time, and they'll tell me about the passing of a mutual friend. And, I think, wow, I wish I would have known. I'd have loved to have gone to the funeral. But you know what? You had a family who just lost this loved one that was kind of scrambling around trying to put together this end-of-life ceremony or this funeral within a 24 to 48 hour period while they're mourning, while they're distraught, and people get overlooked. So for me, my thought is, it's kind of my gig, right? This is my funeral. I want to make sure that the important people are there. So we think that's a pretty important feature. Within your profile, you can safely and securely store any account information, all the accounts that need to be closed. And this is anything from gym memberships to social media accounts to bank accounts, whatever it might be. And again, the thought here, avoid probate. Susie Orman did a podcast I listened to recently, and she had some widows on. And I'll tell you, the stories were horrific. You had these women that had to lawyer up and had to go fight the state for what's rightfully theirs because there was information that they just didn't have, account information that was missing or whatever it was. So we think it's pretty important to have all that stuff documented. Within our site, you can write your own obituary. You can write your own eulogy. You can upload a video eulogy. And throughout the process, you can leave notes along the way for your wish keeper. So leave a video eulogy. Hey, please make sure that you play this at my end of life celebration. And taking control of this, we have a feature called Final Thoughts. And this is a feature where you can choose a particular contact from your contact list, and you can create an email or a text message to go out to them after you pass away. So, maybe you want to queue up birthday wishes to your children. You can set them to go out every calendar year. Or maybe you just want to put together a heartfelt goodbye. A lot of us don't have the opportunity for that final goodbye. So, I think this is just a very powerful tool where, you can kind of express yourself before you pass. And, I'll share with you kind of where that feature came from. So I was actually adopted at 6 days old. And through the powers of online DNA, a few years back, I made contact with my birth mother. Now, I maintained a phone relationship with her for a number of years. We spoke every 2 weeks for about 3 years. So she had given birth to me. She was 16 when she got pregnant. She gave birth to me at 17. Never told a soul about this. She's been married for a number of years. She has 2 children. Never told them. Her own sister never knew about this. It was her mother, the doctor that delivered her and the nurse that was in the room, the only people that knew.
Mm-hmm.
And she's carried this around with her whole life. And in talking to her, I said, "Did you ever discuss this in therapy?" No, no. And I couldn't help but think of how that would wear away somebody over time, right? To be carrying around this secret your whole life. So I thought, what a great opportunity for somebody to just kind of maybe cleanse their soul on the way out. So that was kind of the thought behind that feature. You can upload videos and photographs. Think about photo albums, right? Photo albums have kind of become a thing of the past. But these used to be kind of family heirlooms. And, they were handed down from generation to generation. Kind of non-existent now, right? Because of technology. So thinking about that and thinking about kind of legacy planning and thinking about what statistics will tell you is that 3 generations from now, we're going to be forgotten about. If I asked you to give me some information about your great-grandparents, you'd be hard-pressed to kind of give me some real detail. Maybe you have a photograph laying around somewhere, maybe not, but that's really the extent of it. So upload photographs, videos. Our site syncs with Spotify, so you can create a playlist of songs to kind of play at your funeral, which is really cool. And ultimately, you can create an online legacy that will be out there forever. So 3 generations from now, somebody wants to look you up, they can go to your profile and they can see, like, wow, they can listen to some video, they can understand your life, kind of what your values were, who you were. So, we think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And then within the site, there's a lot of good information with regard to end-of-life planning and why we think this is so important, and tips on how to break the ice, right? This is a topic that most people aren't comfortable talking about. So we've given some thought to that, and we've offered some guidance there. There's a ton of funeral resources of different professions that can help you when it comes to end-of-life planning. So, I would encourage people just stop by the site. It's imadethearrangements.com, and I think you'll find it pretty valuable.
You've thought about everything, and you're so passionate about it, which is really wonderful.
I think this is so important. And again, it just provides peace of mind. I know me personally, I've always struggled with mortality, and the fact that one day it's just going to be over and I'm not going to be here to comfort my children, to mentor my children, to console them. And there were nights when I'd wake up in a cold sweat just thinking about that. One of the things that we know and we've heard throughout our whole lives is, if you have a problem, talk it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working on this now for 2+ years, and I will tell you that I have come to terms with my mortality, and my children have as well. If you think about death in general, right, and how we as a society view death, and talking to groups of people, if you ask people for an image of death, 62% or thereabouts will come back with a grim reaper. So you've got this dark, kind of hooded caricature coming after you with a sickle, right? Even funeral attire, everything that we know about that, it's like, what do you wear to a funeral? Black.
Right.
If you talk to people or you hear stories of people that have been revived and brought back from the dead, there's a commonality of this kind of bright light that they've seen. And you hear this more times than not. But yet everything that we're kind of taught or that we believe is very dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's wrong. I think that we need to really rethink that and how we view and look at this. It's a life cycle event, hands down. And I think it needs to be treated as such.
Right. And I love the way you're shifting the mindset of this as well. I Made the Arrangements is available for individuals to go on your website, but you've also really been pushing to getting this platform promoted through employer groups, because what I didn't realize is the HR burden of somebody that might pass or a family member that might pass of an employer group, and the chaos that you mentioned happens within an employer. Can you talk a little bit about like what you're seeing there and the issues that you're trying to solve?
Sure. And I think that we've all experienced this from time to time in the workplace, right?
Mm-hmm.
When an employee is struggling with a situation, be it personal or even professional, the whole team is struggling and suffering at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes entire departments, sometimes entire companies as a result of this. When you think about an individual who is struggling or suffering with the loss of a loved one, and there were no plans in place.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you think about the lost time and the lost productivity now. The employee now has to deal with probate, deal with attorneys, deal with all that stress. And listen, the majority of the time that they have to contact these different organizations or institutions to resolve some of these issues is during the workday. So the time off is huge for the employer.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of companies offer bereavement leave, and that'll cover you for a short amount of time. But depending on the situation, this drags on for months and sometimes years. So what we believe is that by planning ahead, you can reduce so much of that downtime. And again, provide peace of mind for the employee. Think about the HR director or the HR manager that's sitting in their office, and people come in and they're giving notice because they were diagnosed with a terminal illness and they've got 6 months to live. And how cool would it be to offer them a tool that can kind of help them and their family get through this a little easier? Think about grief and grief associated with the loss of a loved one. And we don't want to eliminate grief. Grief is a beautiful emotion. If you're grieving deeply, to me, that means you've loved deeply. And that's powerful. Nobody ever wants to take that away. But there is a level of stress that's associated with the grief. And that's what we're trying to address. Right? We're trying to reduce the level of stress associated with the grief associated with the loss.
Yeah, that's wonderful. How does it work if I'm an HR leader and I realize that this is a missing benefit for my employees? What does it look like implementing I made the arrangements into my workforce?
So with regard to implementation, it's pretty simple. When we partner up with employers, we'll create a code specific to their employee, and their employees will have access to the platform. It's a simple lift. From an employee perspective, a lot of benefits are quite transactional. And, an employee may not remember how many steps they took on the wellness app that their employer provided. But I can assure you that an employee will remember that employer that provided them a tool to help guide them through life's worst tragedy.
That's right. And the family members are going to remember that too.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for that gift that you're giving to so many. All right. Well, if anybody wants to get in touch with Paul Freed and offer this wonderful stress reducing benefit to their employees, what do they need to do?
People can always email me at paul@imadethearrangements.com. You can go to our website at www.imadethearrangements.com. Once you go to our website, you'll be able to click for employers. We can get some information from you there and get back to you. We'd love to hear from you.
Great. Well, Paul, thank you so much for sharing your story and your passion and this gift you've given to so many and hopefully many more. So thanks for joining us for another episode of the Granite List.Live.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Granite List.Live. Access our entire library by visiting your favorite podcast venue or subscribe on our site, thegranitelist.live.